All right, well, welcome everybody to our youth sports panel tonight. We're going to talk about different topics like youth sports specialization, overuse, training, nutrition, among other topics as well. So I'm Darren, I'm with OSMS. I'm going to be kind of the moderator, question asker for tonight. If anyone does want to ask a question, just kind of give me a signal and make sure to get your question. And we want to keep this conversational, we want to keep it casual. The main thing is we want to get what you want out of this, and we want to welcome everybody in social media land that's watching us as well. So the first thing I want to do is just have the panel just introduce who you are, where you're from, and just a little bit about yourself. So let's start with Elisa here.
Oh.
And we're going to start with you.
All right. My name is Elisa Andrews. I am a physical therapist, but most importantly, I'm a mom of 5 athletes. That's it.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Stager. I'm a clinical nutritionist. I'm the owner of Nutritional Healing in Appleton, and we do personalized nutrition programs for athletes and basically everyone, but tonight will be athlete talk.
I'm Scotty. Obviously, I own Synergy here, strength and conditioning professional. So thank you guys all for being here. We're definitely trying to do more of these community events with the help of all these people that are gracious to give us their time. So along with just training, we definitely want to be a resource for education for parents and kids as well. So.
I'm Erica Cronke. I'm one of the sports medicine docs and non-surgical orthopedists at OSMS, Ortho and Sports Med Specialists. We are a physician-owned private group in the area. We are lucky to be able to service, all insurance plans and be able to be a resource here with our local community options. I live in the Valley and I work right now in the Bay Area.
All right. Thanks, everybody. So first, let's start with Dr. Cronke here. So in playing any sport, there's always the risk of getting injured, having pain, some type of thing. So when should somebody's son or daughter be seen for an ache, a pain, or an injury?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think to her point, I think first of all, as a parent, you'll know your kid's best, right? So I think a lot of times people will come into us and say, well, this is a little bit out of the ordinary for my son or daughter. There's not like an exact number of weeks of pain that I can give you. I always think about if you have an athlete that's consistently complaining of pain in the same area as compared to more general aches and pains, maybe be aware of that. The other thing that I really look at is kind of the company that those aches and pains keep, right? Meaning if you're hearing about lots of other things that wouldn't be necessarily just related to the bone. So not feeling well for a while, rashes, weight loss, other things that you can't explain, that always sends my antenna up a little bit. If you're getting pain that isn't what you would expect, right? So your son or daughter is in a sport, or you're an athlete and you're in a sport, you go for a run, you might have some pains. It's better when you rest. That sounds a little bit more normal, but if you're getting a lot of resting pain, night pain, it doesn't change with activity. Again, that flavor is a little bit different. And then a couple things that I also think about are just if it's consistently affecting function. So not just I have pain, but if you have an athlete that then won't bear weight or is consistently limping, those sorts of things, you probably want to get checked out. And then the last thing I tell families is really getting kind of back to that, you know your child. Some families will just really come in for, I just need this reassurance, or I just need this x-ray, or I've heard on our team or in our family, this came up and this is what I'm worried about. Great, that's what we're there to help you for. Am I talking loud enough? Okay.
Okay. Anyone else? Yeah, you want to?
I think the other thing is if the pain is at the wrong time. So if they're telling you that, they're sleeping and they're waking up and they have pain, and that doesn't make sense. Or if they're telling you, well, it doesn't hurt when I do this, but it hurts when I do that. And it's without knowing the injury, but like my arm hurts even when I'm just walking around. Well, your arm should hurt maybe when you're throwing, but should it hurt when you're walking around? So I think about when your child is telling you that it hurts and be critical of that part, because that is really, for me as a clinician and as a mom, that's something that I say, okay, that doesn't fit. And if it doesn't fit, then that's when you need to ask that next question.
All right, so the next one, let's ask Scotty here. So, you talk about strength training and talk about what is the right age. Is there an appropriate age to start with training, beyond just playing your sport, but actually training?
Well, it's kind of funny because I really kind of thought the old person way of looking at sports and when the proper age for kids to start training was, I thought we were kind of past that until the last week I had a couple parents say, well, you know, my daughter's 12 or 14. I didn't think they could start until such and such an age. And I think that's the biggest misconception is that if you take your child who's 2, 3, or 4 years old and you take them out to the playground and they're on the monkey bars and they're pulling themselves up, that's still strength training. We're not putting them in a weight room and making them bench press 300 pounds at 8 years old, but from the moment they can crawl and the moment that they're born, they're developing strength habits. So it's we have to redefine really what that is, and I think that's where some of the kids that could start earlier that may prevent some of these injuries aren't doing some of those things because it's just a lot of running around. It's not real organized, and I think they can implement some of those real basic level strength programs at a younger age. I think that's a big one. I didn't realize that people were still in kind of that concept of if they start when they're 16, it's going to stunt their growth, and you remember all that stuff when that first came out, and it's so different. You're going to see little kids here tonight that are probably 8 years old wrestling. I mean, that's strength training. It's pushing, it's pulling, it's grabbing, it's core stability. So it's just redefining what strength training really is.
Anyone else care to comment on that?
Well, kids play differently now, right? What did we do when we played? We climbed the monkey bars, we climbed trees. When was the last time you saw a kid climb a tree? So I think to Scotty's point, if we're not encouraging those kinds of play, and they don't let them do things on the playground the way they used to let us do things on the playground, we have to bring that back into their lives. And if we're not bringing it back in play, then we're going to have to do it in a structured environment, which means it's sport and strength training.
All right, so the next question is for Kimberly. So, you know, whether you're talking about training, during the exercise, recovery, whatever it is, electrolyte drinks are very, very popular. Gatorade, Powerade, et cetera, et cetera. Are those things that are good for kids to be drinking before, after, during their sport?
Electrolyte drinks are one of the most popular questions that we get, and just with anything that we're putting into our bodies, I'm a big advocate of read that label and what are you actually getting from it. You know, the purpose is to get those electrolytes. So there are 4 main electrolytes that you want to be getting out of a drink like that. They are sodium, potassium, chloride, and magnesium. And the reason you want all 4 is because they serve over 300 enzyme purposes in the body. And what we're running into is that a lot of those drinks are void of one of them or 2 of them, and it's a misleading product then. You know, you're getting something in there, but because you can say that it has electrolytes if there's one in there. Just like a lot of food has misleading labeling. So there's also the purpose of having the carbohydrate or the sugar source of it, you know, to replenish or to build up that stamina before an event. And that's another key area because when an athlete needs a carbohydrate, glucose and fructose are the 2 main energy pathways that an athlete needs to perform well. And a lot of electrolyte drinks don't have either of those. And they're using some other form of incorrect sugar. So I brought a few examples that I was going to share with you guys. And Powerade. So that one is full of high fructose corn syrup and things like red dye number 40. And which that dye strips the body of zinc, which is another essential nutrient for an athlete. And the electrolyte combo is not balanced. Gatorade is all sugar. It's minimal unbalanced electrolytes. So there's not even many in there at all. I mean, it's under that label again. Dyes, it's essentially sugar water. And I'm not here to ever make anyone feel bad when I'm educating them about drinking Gatorade. I was one of those kids, and I get it because it is a product, you know, it's a marketed product that we were like, oh, that must be it. And Gatorade is a big one. I was on a panel once with Garrett Weber Gale, who was on the Olympic athletic team with Michael Phelps, and he taught his little kids in the swimming class. He's like, guys, don't fall for it. I was never drinking that, but we are in a position where we have to say we are. You know, so we fall for that marketing from professional athletes. A few others, vitamin water is missing electrolytes and it's very heavily in sugar. Coconut water is better, but it's not good. You're missing the nutrients and it's getting to the equivalent of plain, really expensive water. So those are just some examples. And again, look, when you do get an electrolyte drink, look for those 4 electrolytes: sodium, potassium, chloride, and magnesium.
So just quickly, as a follow-up, do you have any recommendations on what
That's
would
what I was
be?
waiting
Because
for.
we heard a lot of
You
what,
just emptied their
what not to,
pantry.
right? I know what I'm getting rid of now in my refrigerator, but is there?
I have a great product that I do carry at my office. You know, I'm not here to pitch me or what I do or anything like that, but it would have all those in it and the glucose and fructose. Scotty, you probably also have a great product here that you can use Scotty as a reference since you're in health here. There is a more natural Noon, N-U-U-N. It's a little bit better. Out of anything that you just go out to the store and get, I would say, worst case scenario, get one of those. Otherwise, check with Scotty, you can talk with me.
Can you spell that? Say that again?
U-U-N. Noon.
N-U-U-N.
It's gotten a lot better over the years.
Don't they sell it at like Dick's?
Yeah, or like running stores.
Yeah, running stores.
Biking stores, the online.
Amazon doesn't have it,
Everything's
doesn't exist.
But just again, look at the ingredients.
What about like chocolate milk or something like that?
Chocolate milk. So that one, I've been speaking about that one for years. I've been in business for 9 years. And I've actually been brought into sports teams in high schools, and the coaches will say, please, you tell them not to drink chocolate milk. I'm not allowed to. And I was like, great, throw me to the wolves, you know? We're in Wisconsin, which makes it even harder. So chocolate milk can be a source of quick carbohydrate and protein. Is it necessary? No, there's other things you can be getting that from, like your food. Because milk, in general, is inflammatory to the body. And what does an athlete not need? More inflammation. It's extremely hard to digest, milk in general, whether it be chocolate or white. And the protein content is minimal. You can get it through other foods, which we can touch on tonight too. So I would not opt for chocolate milk. I trained myself. I ran the Boston Marathon, multiple marathons, and I never touched chocolate milk. I never touched these energy drinks. It's just, you can do it without, especially if you want to be the best you can. It's misleading. It's just misleading.
Just a couple follow-up comments to that. I think what's out there, she's right, from the marketing perspective is a little bit of a challenge. So as a parent, right, you want your student athlete to have a good drink, but energy drinks aren't sports drinks, so you got to be a little bit careful of the caffeine. I treat a tremendous amount of student athletes for concussions, which is a different topic, and many of them don't sleep well to begin with. Well, let's look at what they're drinking and what they're taking in for calories, and how much of it is pop and how much is it energy drinks instead of sports drinks. But then I think to the point earlier about timing, some of those are helpful. Some of these, I should clarify, sports drinks are helpful during, before, after sports, but not 2 hours later when I'm on my iPad or when I'm watching TV or right before bed. And I think when I approach that with my students, they're like, well, but I just ran a couple hours ago. Well, but that isn't the time necessarily to be taking those in, because they have a tremendous amount of sugar and calories and things like that. So I always look at making sure it's not caffeine in most settings, and then really the timing of it.
And I think, and on our end too, we deal with some of our kids coming in who like the pre-workout stuff.
Yeah.
Right, which typically, let's be honest, your pre-workout is probably, if you look at the label, it's probably mostly caffeine, because that's what's going to give them the energy. So, I just tell a lot of my young kids, if you can't get excited to come in and work out and train with a good diet, I just don't recommend elevating your heart rate when we're going to elevate it some more through caffeine. It's just not a wise idea. Yep.
Push the water. Boring as it may be, push the water.
Good. Lisa, you and I were talking a little bit before about, many times youth athletes are participating in sports training, whatever, they get sore. And can you talk a little bit about the difference between what's sore, what's too sore, kind of where that sort of fits?
Yeah, so I love it when my kid comes home from lifting and tells me he had a great workout because he knows he's going to be sore tomorrow. I'm like, okay. So a question I get a lot as an athletic trainer and physical therapist, and as a mom too, is should my kid be sore? And how sore should they be, and how long should they last? And I'm sure, and Scotty can speak to this too. You and I know, as I'm going to assume we're all a little bit older than 18, when we work out, we're going to be sore for a little bit because we've got some muscle changes that are happening, some tissue changes that are happening. There's going to be some lactic acid buildup. There's going to be a depletion of magnesium. We're going to have some things go on. Young kids really should not be sore for more than 12 to 24 hours. And I think 24 hours is taking it too far even sometimes. I feel like they should be working to the capacity that they've used their muscles, they've used up their nutrition, and they can replenish that with good nutrition and with good recovery techniques, that they should not be extending soreness for days and days. If someone tells you they're sore 2 and 3 days afterwards, I'd look at what they did, how much of it they did, what their technique is. You know, maybe they were not using a proper form when they were doing something, or they did too many of the reps in one specific pattern and they didn't change it up to, you know, to do their muscles. You know, examples, guys who come in and tell me, like the football players I work with, and they come in, they tell me they did so many big squats that their glutes hurt for 4 days. That's not good. That means you broke down muscle tissue. It means you caused an injury. And not that you can't recover from it, but it means you did something negative rather than something positive. So I'm in that 12-hour to 24-hour bracket. Where do you guys stand?
Like for me, it's two challenges for me. So I'll give you the business side of it for me. A parent will look at me and say, I didn't do my job if their kid isn't sore for 3 days. Now that doesn't change the way I still train. I'm still not going to make them do that. But unfortunately, from a parent's perspective, they think that we haven't done our job as a trainer if their kid's not sore. Now, my belief is that any monkey off the street can make a kid sore. That's not hard to do. That's not training. That's just beating them up. So we want to try to progress that with the soreness. Now, we also notice that our kids shouldn't be sore for a couple weeks when they work with us either, but you may experience some different sorenesses, you know, from when they first start to 3 months down the road if we're in a different phase of our training. So if we're 8 weeks into it and now we're starting a second training phase, their body might be sore in a little bit different way, but again, shouldn't be painful, and you can tell me if I'm wrong on this, but that pain shouldn't affect them from doing the movement or doing the exercise, because then they're going to develop a compensation somewhere.
I think it's hard to give a number in all scenarios. I think it's, I don't know that I can give you a number in all scenarios. I like what you're saying of like, where did you tip from appropriate conditioning of the muscle and building that muscle to maybe too much? You know, there's early muscle soreness, there's delayed muscle soreness. We know that if you're starting a program, it's going to probably be 6 weeks to build up. I don't know that I have an exact answer for you. I think to her point is, I look a little bit more at how they're moving and was it a balanced workout, but then I also look at some of the details with kids. So for example, I have a daughter that's a little bit hyperflexible. My son is not. So some of those hyperflexible kids are going to have a little bit more soreness just because their muscles are trying to control those joints. But then I also look at the personality. This is going back to you'll know your kids, right? If you told my son that it was a competition, he would do as many squats as he could to beat everybody until he couldn't get out of bed the next day. So I think there's all those kind of flavors of your child. So I think you have to go back to what goal am I trying to accomplish? And looking at form and who's running their program. I don't know if that was a really good answer.
And I like that she said too, like the flexibility levels of that too. I mean, that's one thing that we often don't understand is if you do have someone that's a gymnast, they may be very mobile. They're not so stiff and rigid. Or you get somebody that if we get them in they're what's called hypermobile, where they're almost like double jointed everything that they do. We're going to spend more time with those athletes on strength and stability. We don't need to stretch them more. They're already mobile as it is. So we try to explain that to the kids when they're in with us, and then also with the parents too, to say, you know what, this is why I can do this with your child, but I can't do this with yours because, yeah, they both play football, but your kid's like double jointed and walking around like an octopus, and the other guy's walking around like the Tin Man. So there's a big change in how we have to address that.
I think your points are excellent, and trying to get with someone that understands that is good. The other thing as a parent that I would have you look at a little bit is how many times in the office do you hear like parents or in your room sit up straight, right? But I've started to look a lot at the habits of these kids outside of the arena, and this, I'm going to exaggerate this to make a point, but I see many of my young student athletes that will like stand like this, right? So think about what you're doing. Like if you're standing like this all day long, those muscles are all going to get locked up and tight and sore, and then it isn't going to take that much to make those muscles sore and probably to use an incorrect form. I'm certainly not judging folks that love to cross their legs, but if you always cross your leg one way or sit on one foot, again, you're forcing that pelvis off. And it's fun. I just go to the mall and watch people, and it's amazing to kind of just see some of those habits. So you can work with the best physical therapist and do your exercise in 10 minutes a day or be in the right program. But then if the other 1,400 minutes in the day you're standing like this or like this on my phone, or I'm doing this all day long, you're gonna not have the benefits of what we want you to do. So these are great questions, but I would encourage you to go home and just look and see what you're seeing at home if you are getting kids that are sore and having issues with CBC.
Anybody have any questions right now for our panelists? Otherwise, I have plenty. So, okay. Let's stay with Dr. Conk with Erica here. So you're talking about posture and different things. What are some things people can, or kids can do to help prevent injuries? Are there things they can do to?
Yeah, great question. So I think we kind of touched already on the idea of relative rest, right? So pushing your body, but yet when is enough? When is too much too much? And again, I wish we had a little bit more firmer rules on this. I know we get lots of questions on sports specialization, and some of that is going to be age and dependent on where your child is at from a competitive standpoint. But we will advocate, usually in healthcare, at least a day off a week. And really from a certain sport, you do want some periods of time off, and that's typically a month off a couple times a year. I also get questions a lot about like how much in multiple sports is too much, and again, I don't know that we have answers to that, but I'll have some young student athletes that will come from school and they won't have a lot of time to eat, so we're talking about kind of nutrition and stuff, and then they'll go to one sport, so they'll go to cross country for 2 hours, and then they'll go home and they'll go to like their club sport for another 2 hours. That's probably a lot on a young growing body. So I don't know that I have an exact number, but I always think about we might need to kind of be prioritizing some of that. I already mentioned the habits. I also look at injury prevention really from a nutritional perspective as fueling your body. That's really how I look at nutrition for our athletes. Are you fueling it appropriately? Are you recovering appropriately? But then I also really start to look at if you're getting kind of a consistent ache and pain. So for example, if you have an athlete that tends to always have a hamstring injury or they always hurt one leg, there may be something kind of going back to core that we really have to look at. And is that related to patterns they've learned? Do they have an ache and pain? Are they, again, kind of have certain habits that they've got that we need to look at? So I am a huge fan of injury prevention, and I think there's lots that we can do up here and lots that I think your insights really help us help you.
And a big one that we see is, the overtraining thing. Now it's not a gold standard, but the NSCA uses a guideline of typically 1 hour practice per week based on the age. So an 8-year-old could practice up to 8 hours a week and be okay. And as that age level goes up, it's appropriate with age. That is one thing that the NSCA does look at as far as the amount of participation. Like I said, we see it a lot with kids on a weekend that will go and play 8-10 hours of basketball, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They're eating walking tacos with Doritos and hamburger meat, washing them down with Skittles and M&Ms and as many Gatorades as they can drink. And then they come in on Monday and wonder why they're sore as hell. It doesn't take a genius to figure out why. Now you've hit everything. You overtrained, you haven't eaten well, you didn't sleep well. It's just a complete stressor on their body.
And we talk in baseball about pitch count, right? Everybody who's got a baseball player has heard about pitch count. I had a really good lesson with one of my high school swimmers this past summer about stroke count. And it was funny because his coach was talking about getting his stroke count down so he'd be a better swimmer. And I looked at him and I said, how many lengths of the pool do you swim and how many times? And at the end I said, if you got your stroke count down, so he was better trained and had worked on his sport, he actually was going to get his stroke count down by hundreds every week. Well, how many times would you want to do this with your shoulder before your shoulder would be sore? So don't think about it necessarily just for pitchers, but think about each of your athletes. Your basketball players, how many steps are they putting on the hardwood? Your runners, how many steps are they putting on the track? Your swimmers, how many strokes are they going through? Every single sport can have overuse. There is no sport that's safe from it. So when you're looking at your student athletes and you're spending time with them and you're working with their trainers and you're talking about their coaches and what they're doing. And I mean, I've got kids. Like I said, I'm a mom of 5 different athletes. We played every sport except hockey. That's the only one we didn't do. And you know, we had those where those kids would play 7 games in a weekend of basketball. You know, and they're done. So you have to look big picture at not only what they're doing with their sport, but what are they doing with their training? What are they doing with their in the weight room? What are they doing in FIED? You know, I mean, every single one of those minutes counts to your overtraining. And don't think that there's any sport that is exempt from that at all.
I want to touch on that overuse. So are there signs that like a child might be overusing their body, or you know, are there warning signs of overuse that you should look for?
I mean, for us, and I'll just speak on the training environment, we'll notice it with just like fatigue, tiredness. They're not able to do some of the things that we had them do last week. Their form just looks bad. They can't really concentrate on what you're doing. And honestly, we're blessed to be in the world that we're in because our kids really open up to us. A lot of them will tell us. Like, they won't tell mom and dad. They'll tell me. They're like, I feel like trash. You know, but I don't want my dad to know. You know, which is sad in a sense because I have kids too, and I hope my kids are open enough to tell me if we feel like we're doing too much. But that's how we notice some of the things on our world. I mean, I'm sure it's different for you guys, but
No, that's it. I mean, they start telling you the things they're not doing. You know, or if you notice in your own kid, he didn't go to the gym and do a pickup basketball game with his buddies because he didn't feel like he could or he should or he was too tired. You know, or I didn't. You know, if they start not doing, especially in their high school athletes, not doing social things because they're too tired or they're too worn down or they don't have the want to go out and do those things, and that's what your kid would normally do. That's a big red flag for me, really, because if it starts changing what they're doing in their everyday, certainly if they're doing things like, you know, I don't know, not doing their chores for, like, my son the other day I'm like, what are you doing? He was throwing his laundry down the stairs instead of walking it down because he was too sore to walk down the stairs.
That's a sign.
That was a
Yeah.
sign.
Like a sign,
we can sometimes pinpoint it too on like foods. Like if I know they're gone all weekend and like it's been pizza ranch in between the ball games, I mean that affects them too. You can just tell like they'll either get white or we've had kids that work with us that are in good shape and then all of a sudden they're in the bathroom throwing up. It's like, what's the deal? They're like, well, you know, and then you trace it back to it and they had pizza and burgers and the food will play a role in that too.
I think she made a great point about the things they're not doing. I think the ones that I see are the ones in the office, right, that they've had either an ache and pain that hasn't gone away. And sometimes when I start asking about, are there things you're not doing? Have you had other injuries? Then it'll come up, well, yeah, you know, my son or daughter's been injured on and off for the last couple months. And then I do start to really dig at where are we at from a training perspective? What's our recovery meals, injury prevention, kind of all that. I think you had a great idea too on number of reps, and I don't know if you're visual like I am. I'm kind of a visual learner, so I always think about bell-shaped curve, right? And I love seeing runners, so this comes out a lot in runners. But think about your bell-shaped curve, right? So you take, I give a lot of credit to coaches because I don't know that I would be a great coach in trying to corral a whole bunch of kids and all make them, for example, running cross country. But take 10 kids and try to put them through a running program. Well, some need to run this much because they haven't maybe trained as much, and maybe some need to run out here because maybe physiologically their body can just push more, they've trained more. But a lot of these kids are still going to get some aches and pains. So I always think about it as rather than giving numbers or hours, really like, can we limit some of your reps? If your team's running 2 miles and you're getting sore at a mile and you're starting to limp, well then maybe we need to have you cross-train. So I always try to advocate that, again, you know your student athletes, and can we put some flexibility and some individuality into a team setting or into training so that you maybe don't get to that point of overtraining or fatigue or injuries. If I
No, that makes sense.
phrase that well.
So I'm going to jump over to Kimberly here. So protein shakes are promoted for performance recovery as well. So if an athlete chooses to have a protein shake, are there certain sources of protein that are better than others?
Absolutely there. Protein shakes, again, when we're thinking of athletes, and we're drawn to products, you know, more easily because we want the best of the best, and we want to be the best. And like an electrolyte drink, I have to drink that because everyone's doing it. I have to have a protein shake because everyone's doing it. And protein shakes is something that I see carried forth through life, whether they're working out or an athlete. You know, I see it in a lot of my adult clients as well, where they're dependent on a protein shake. So let's think of what the purpose of protein is for. It's to help build muscle and repair what we've torn down throughout our activity. And what I'm noticing now, because we have this focus on loading up on protein and carnivore diets and paleo diets, and that's like the buzzword right now, and it changes, you know, it's changed over the last 9 years, but a heavily protein-based diet is not a performance diet. So when we're thinking about protein shakes then, or protein in general, when you're consuming it, your body can hold approximately 25, give or take, grams of protein at a time and utilize it. It cannot store protein. Your body can store fat and it can store carbohydrates, but it's not storing protein. It has to be brought in a certain amount and utilized to build those muscles, and you have to keep it going throughout the day. I like protein drinks, you know, especially when we're talking about those scenarios when you're on the go and the weekend events and when there's not so good food choices. Then I think that can supplement a good diet. Protein shake should not be your diet, it can supplement a good diet. Now, when it boils down to which protein sources to focus on, I take a look at the athlete to the next level of what are the goals here for this athlete? What are other things going on in their health? So whey protein is probably the most popular one you've heard of throughout the years. Whey protein is great for building muscle. I think it's great when we ask that question about chocolate milk. Do that instead. Get one that's not full of sugar and a bunch of ingredients that you can't pronounce. Again, we're great resources for that. But if you have to have like a whey protein for that, and you're looking to bulk up those muscles, whey protein is great. Now, there's other health reasons, like when we're saying when they're burning out, they might have other things going on. And when you want to perform optimally, if they have gut health issues going on, I mean, we have a tennis court size of gut tissue in our body if we spread it out. That's a huge surface area. If that's compromised, they're not going to be performing well. So we want to think about if there's a lot of inflammation going on, focus more on a plant protein like a rice protein or a pea protein. It's going to be easier on their system. Standard American diet is bombarded with dairy the way it is, and wheat and inflammatory products. So pea and rice is going to be a little bit tamer on the body and still give you the protein you need. And then there's like a third level where I don't see it as much, but if a student athlete is struggling with their weight, or if they have a family history of high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, they can probably benefit from the plant sterols in a soy protein, an organic soy protein that is also clean like the rest of them.
That's good. So let's go to Elisa here. So as kids obviously are still growing, so how can you identify when maybe there might be something more than just being sort of like maybe an injury versus a growing pain?
Well, growing pains are kind of an interesting thing because really kids are, Dr. because, I mean, by the time a kid is 15, they shouldn't really be having growing pains because they're not having those rapid growth periods anymore. Growing pains are probably going to be more common in your 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You know, if you've got the son who grows 7 inches in 8 months like I had, that was an everyday. Everything hurts, you know, and that was growing pain. That had nothing to do with his training or lack of training. He was just getting tall. He finally passed me up. He's excited. So, you know, growing pains are something that they're very real. Your kids aren't making them up. But again, evaluate what your child is telling you about them. Is it, you know, I mean, they're not, growing pains are not sharp pain. They're dull, achy pain. They're pretty consistently in one kind of area. You know, they'll tell you their knees hurt or one knee hurts. Or they'll tell you, you know, they got this one spot in their back of their shoulder that's kind of sore. But it really just comes back, I think we just keep coming back to the same point. You have to listen to what your child is telling you about when it hurts. Growing pain is not going to be worse because they worked out. It's not going to get worse because they did an exercise or they overtrained. It's just something that they're going to go through. And the number one thing, I think, well, there's 3 things. hydrate, sleep, and eat correctly. You can't train out of growing pain. You can't exercise out of growing pain. You have to give the body what it's asking for as it's changing and growing, and that's going to be sleeping, which our kids, believe it or not, don't do enough of, most of them. Eating much better, and like to Kimberly's point, making sure it's the green leafies and it's the fruits and vegetables, and you're getting your essential amino acids and you're getting your protein, but you're getting it in balanced ways. So look at your, unless you have allergy issues, look at your nuts, look at your plants, look at your sterols for sure. And then water, 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 water. Even your kids who swim, water, 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 water. They have to put it in, right? So that's the thing, and that's my middle school athletes typically are the ones that I'm dealing with that are going to tell me that they have the growing pains. And parents ask me all the time, what should we do? And I'm like, you just have to give it, that has to come from the inside out, and time.
So diet's been a big topic, but how, with friends going to Chipotle or wherever it is, or something like that, how do you try to keep your child to have as balanced of a diet as possible? Like, any tips or tricks to be able to do that? Say anybody.
I mean, as a parent, it's we try to give our kids options that are healthy. First of all, what do you have in your fridge? I have 4 boys, so they'll all tell you there's never anything in my fridge. But it's making sure the fresh fruits and vegetables are there. It's preparing them. For me, on a Sunday, I go through and I cut up all the carrots. We don't use the baby carrots. I use the long ones, the bigger ones. I'll take a head of cauliflower and chop it up. I'll take a head of broccoli and chop it up. It's got to be easy, right? Quick grab and go for them. So that means a little more work on the parent side because you have to have it available. I will get up on a Saturday morning and prepare a whole bunch of fruit, and it goes right on my counter because if it's there where they see it, they grab it when they go by. I cut up the cheese and crackers and have that packaged ahead of time with what I think is the right amount for them, so that they're not just grabbing random amounts. We're doing some portion control to have. So it might mean a little more preparation on the parent side, but make it easy for them to get the healthy things and have them in your house so that they're not leaving your house, especially those who drive, and stopping at Quick Trip and grabbing whatever they can grab on the way to school.
I agree with you totally. You have to have the whole family involved. Nutrition starts in the home, and the younger you are, you're not going to know that on your own. And I was one of those, like you're saying, in high school. I remember sitting at track practice thinking about how I was going to Dairy Queen when I was done. I didn't care. And did that make me a good athlete? No. I didn't get better until after those years. And I didn't know. There was some good food around, but there's so much processed food, so much fast food that I grew up with that I thought that was normal. And there's so many of us that do think that's normal, and it's not. The convenience is killing us, and it's causing inflammation. And bottom line, nutrition starts in the home. You have to do it together.
Just to touch on what they're saying, and you asked about tricks. With some of my training in kids, we were always told, well, give them options, right, and let them pick. But I mean, realistically, if you put a plate of carrots out and a plate of Snickers out, do you think your kids are gonna choose carrots? So I think the trick that we did from early on was kids got to choose, but they got to choose between vegetables. So we started with fruits and vegetables and made sure that was part of everything else. And I think anything in moderation, right? Like dessert, you can get the huge ice cream bars, or you can splurge once a week, and then at night, we get a tiny piece of candy or something like that. It's, I think, really just trying to go at it. I like you, was like, I'm gonna go work out so I can eat whatever I want when I was in high school. And I think now even my kids are 10 and 7, and I really talk to them about, yes, food tastes good, but yes, we have to fuel so you can get bigger and stronger and go and play and run and jump and do all those things that you want to. And then I think the last thing is, to your point of the convenience. I know it does take a little bit longer, but 30 seconds maybe to throw in an apple as compared to a package of goldfish or something like that. So I think if you just start with really small changes, for busy parents, I think it's overwhelming to hear all this and then just say, oh my gosh, I gotta go home and do this all. So I usually just say, start with one thing. Add one healthier snack in for them and get that level, and then maybe tackle what they're drinking, and model it to your kids, because it's hard to tell them pop isn't good for you if we're drinking it too.
And those are some little things that we've tried to do too from a training stuff, because Kim and her staff has done some really cool stuff for some of our athletes, but then as we would, work with them on a more regular basis than you did, because we're in front of them, we would start to ask them how that was going. Well, they can't keep up with all the things, so we would even just try to do our part and say, okay, let's focus on, can you at least do me a favor and try to have a vegetable every day? Let's start with that. I'm not going to ask you to have this, and this, but if you think French fries is your vegetable, then we got to change that part first. So yeah, definitely with your little kids and your younger kids and even your high school athletes, we've started to do that here, even though we know kind of the overall thing should be better, but I can't change them all until I can start with one first. So that's what we've done with some of the information that you've given our kids is like, right, like what she gave you is 100% correct, but I know you're not going to do it. So let's try step one first, then we'll build up to it. So.
I have two quick suggestions to help. If you are eating on the go a lot, try to think, sometimes I just talk about this with my clients because they'll opt for the Subway, they think it's healthier. I mean, that's a loaf of bread you're eating though, with some veggies on a sub, or something fast and quick. Every town has a grocery store too, so you can grab and go quick thing, easy things from a grocery store that are whole and healthy, or the grocery stores that are a little bit bigger and they have the food bar in there. You can at least do that versus if you're stuck on the road. Another great resource, and we were just talking about this, Dr. because I do, for my company, Nutritional Healing, we do have a Pinterest board. So if you're at home, you're thinking, I just don't even know what direction to take this. I don't know what they'll like. I don't know what I like. You can look at our Pinterest board. We have thousands of ideas out there that you can start with.
I'm going to go to Scotty for this one to start, but so sports obviously are very physical, but there's also a mental side to playing a sport and training in particular. So how do you approach kind of that mental side, especially when you have a youth athlete who's possibly playing multiple sports, playing club, playing high school, or playing middle school? How do you approach that mental side from a training perspective?
For us, when they come in, it's really important to know the why. Like, I don't care why mom and dad signed you up. I want to know why you want to be here. So from that side of it, if we can understand what they want to get out of it, then that's just important for us as the X's and O's and the sets and the reps, because that's going to give us a little bit of a goal, maybe how much effort they're going to put into it, those type of things. So that's probably, I would say, one of the biggest ones from us on a mental side. Then you start getting into, the mental fatigue and where they're at in different periods of the training and stuff like that. But from that very first initial thing when they walk through the door, it's finding out that, why are you here? Why do you want to do this? Because we've been very blessed with the athletes that walk through here. They're here because they want to be. It's their why. It's not mom and dad's why. But unfortunately, like in the school settings, it's the peer pressure of I got to play basketball because all the other kids are doing it. Well, that's not really the why that you're ever going to get. Those kids that are doing it for that reason are not going to sleep well. They're not going to eat well. They're not going to train well. They're just doing it because they want the jersey like their buddies. So we've been blessed to have those come through here. So some of that mental part becomes easier for us. But I mean, in time, we've had kids that you found out that their why really is non-existent. So they won't last. They won't continue.
Any questions out to our audience right now? All right, so why don't we go through each panelist? We'll start with Elisa here, so we're going to put you on the spot here. But if you had maybe just based on your area of expertise, whether that's from being a parent, what you do for a living, whatever it is, give us like maybe the top 2 things you would give advice to parents about their youth athletes.
Okay, so I could do a lot more than 2, but I'll give you 2.
It could be 3.
So the first thing is that, a lot of our students do not have balanced workout programs. What I see as a physical therapist, and I've been doing physical therapy and athletic training. I was a high school student as a student athletic trainer in high school. So I've been doing this a really long time. I've seen 30-some years of how it's changed and what we've done. We need to see a better variety in the training that our kids are doing. We need to see kids stop specializing at age 4. We need to see them doing things. Challenge your kid to do other activities, get them out doing other things. Don't get caught in the trap of my kid needs to do this, and this to be the best. On a personal note, my son, who's going to be a senior this year, who's a pretty darn good athlete, decided to quit being an athlete because he was so burned out. And that, I don't know how much of that's on me. I don't know how much of that's on my husband and I. We gave him every opportunity he asked for, and somewhere along the line, things changed for him. And it's been really painful. Scotty can tell you. There's a lot of tears in our house between all of us this last year. So the piece of that is give your kids every opportunity to ask for, and sometimes challenge them. Ask them, like Scotty said, what's their why? When you ask for that, why are you asking for it? Is it for the right reason? Is it to make you a better person? Is it to make you a better person? Not a better athlete, but a better person? Or is it for the wrong reason? So that's huge. And then and make sure that they have that balance. The second thing is with your athletes and your student athletes is take breaks. Like, just take breaks and take a month off. What would you do with all the time that you're missing running them to practice, sitting waiting for them at practice, sitting in the bleachers, sitting at the football stadium? Do something fun with your family during that time. For those of you who have littles, so my number 5 will tell you how many hours he has spent watching his older siblings do sports, right? He didn't want to even be an athlete until he was in 8th grade because he was so sick of being at athletic events. So take the break, take that time to do other things with your family, and that will make them better athletes, and it will definitely make them better people.
My 2 takeaways. The first one would be optimize your nutrition, because the appearance of your athlete doesn't necessarily represent what's going on inside. So if they have the slimmest physique for a fast sport, or if they've got the biggest muscles for a power sport, doesn't mean their insides are healthy, and they might not have gotten there for a healthy reason or a healthy way and manner of eating. So think about whole foods and what you're putting into your body. Read those ingredient labels. And then my second takeaway is, again, nutrition starts in the home. Do it with them. I see so many parents that want so much for their kids and to be the best athletes, and the kids do too, but when they sit there in consults together, I can tell there's a disconnect there, like, well, why aren't you doing it? Well, I learned to eat this way from somebody, so there's like a butting of heads, so do it together.
I think a big one for me, and this has been our push kind of all year, has been balance. We've seen a tremendous imbalance with our kids this year. From the amount of athletes that we've seen this year that we've never had the opportunity to work with, that have come in completely beat up before we've ever even worked with them, is a tall tale sign that our balance has shifted. So we have a little chart that we post every once in a while. It's the percentages are not important, but it's 25% sleep, 25% nutrition, 25% recovery, and 25% training. And those can shift from time to time and be more or less. But one of the biggest beefs that I have right now is with some of the stuff that we see with like travel ball, whether it's baseball, basketball, whatever, and it's all travel and games and games and games, and there's no time to spend working on your body. I don't care if your kids go to yoga, go. I mean, do something different, but we can't spend those 8 hours in the gym. And then I think another one too is you guys have to not be afraid to question some people on the whys of why they're doing it. And then as a parent, to just always remember you have the right to say no. My kid's going to take off. I understand I'm paying to be in this club, but we're going to take this weekend off. He or she needs it. And you know what? Don't let that coach or that high school coach or the club or whoever it is really cut you any flack for that, because you're being smart with your body. You really are. One of the guys, this is on a whole different level, but one of our guys that we've trained for a long time is Brian Balaga. So Brian, as you guys know, had some trouble with some injuries. This was one of the first years that he went to the new coach and said, listen, I am taking a mandatory day during the week and I'm off. I'll be here, but I'm off. I know my body and I know what I need to do, and I'm off. And I think it's okay for us to do that with kids too, in some way, shape, or form. We don't have to just do it because someone's saying so. If we don't do that, then you're going to be seeing a lot more of her and a lot more of her.
You'll be getting what I got.
Right,
the kid who doesn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah. So I'd rather say now that you say no to some of those things than to have a kid not want to play down the road or be hurt because they can't play.
I can be quick. My 3 takeaways are really fueling your body. One of the websites I really like is healthychildren.org. It's a offshoot of the American Academy of Pediatrics. And if you guys want this later, I can show it to you. But I was looking through here for just healthy snacks on the go for kids. But look up healthychildren.org and see if there's ideas to help you fuel your kids. The second one, I think, is to Scotty's point. I really look at core and balance. It's been amazing to me to see some very high-level high school athletes that are playing at a Division I level, or college athletes, and you try to put them into a playing position or isolate their shoulder blades. And it's amazing to me that they're on the field doing those things when they can't hold their arms up like this in a shoulder blade position longer than I can. So I've really kind of taken a step back too and kind of just looked at how are my kids moving? How are they balancing? What's their leg dominance? And I think we have people here that can help you with, I think, getting back to climbing a tree, all that balance stuff that we used to do, we don't do that anymore. We put the kids in a gym and they're not developing the same way, or they're creating habits that are gonna set them up for injuries. And then the third thing is really praise the effort. And that's for all of us. Again, I'm sorry to pull out papers, but I was trying to prep for tonight. There's this great article on sports specialization, again, from the American Academy of Pediatrics, and they've really looked at long-term athlete development. And if you're really looking at ages, they're really talking about it should be fun at ages 6 to 10. Your training for competition and to win really shouldn't start until you're 17 or older. So think about that in where your kids are in their age and what they can take from a mental and psychological standpoint. I mean, really for my 10, 11-year-old, they should still be really looking at skills, not wins and losses and all that sorts of stuff. So I think if we praise the effort, ultimately you're going to get kids that are happier and healthier long term. But I think it's a whole cultural switch in how we're approaching our student athletes these days.
That's great. Any? Yep.
So how do you change that philosophy in these coaches?
I think it's a trend. I think to Scotty's point,
don't get us started.
I think to Scotty's point, sometimes I feel like as a physician I get involved with that, right? Like a letter from a physician is what some of these families want. I don't know how well you know the coach, or if there's other parents that are in similar situations. Again, I am blessed that we've had a lot of wonderful coaches down by me. I wouldn't want that job for anything, because I feel like sometimes they probably feel like they can't do anything right. But I would encourage them to come to opportunities like this, because I know there are many opportunities in the area where we really try to get in front of coaches, and a lot of times they're volunteer and they're busy, right? Maybe just having resources available. If you know that your child is struggling, or you're hearing, I don't know if I want to do things, or I'm having aches and pains, pull healthcare professionals in. Sadly, maybe for a short period of time, that's the route to go, or pull other parents in that are having that issue. You guys have?
Yeah, and I think the education for us is the route that we've tried to take as a strength and conditioning company as well. But it is hard because sometimes they don't want to listen. But as a parent, you have to understand that you've got someone that, bless their heart, they're in the right place trying to do the right thing for your kid, but they have no background in the human body whatsoever, and they're yelling at your young son, and what's he gonna do? He's gonna do what he's told because he doesn't want to lose a spot. So we have to try to do our part to try to help those guys say, you know what, maybe rely on some people, even if it's not us, rely on some people in your community that understand their areas, and to try to help. But that's been we felt like has kind of really been our only approach. And it has been tough because we've done coaches clinics and stuff like that, and some of these guys just, come. We do that ourselves. Well, congratulations. That YouTube video that you did was some guy that doesn't know what he's doing either. So, but we see that. So it's just kind of staying persistent and trying to stay in front of them. I don't think there really is a good answer, Todd. I mean, really?
Yeah.
We just pull our kids basically. We just pull them out.
Yes.
I just go up to them. I don't care. They need time away and stuff like
Yep.
that, and if it's going to affect them, it's going to affect them. But
Yep, we'll deal with it.
we'll deal with it. So, yeah.
I'm the parent of the swimmer with this that needs to work on his short pump. So we started to see Elisa for shoulder injuries.
Sure.
And so my son took that math back to his coach, who happens to also be a substitute teacher as well. Like when they really focus on the math, and then they use that knowledge that we had brought to totally change up workouts that he was doing
Yep.
for everybody. And so this is a coach who is not receptive to change, but just finally getting him to realize that, hey, we want to, if we have a good swimmer, we want to prevent
Right.
these injuries from these other kids. So
It helped him to see the black and white.
just finally getting him to realize was super helpful. So.
That's awesome. If you can get those guys to do that, that's fantastic.
Do the math.
Yeah.
That's what it took. It took the math.
So when you say about rest, what's your perspective on rest? I guess that's my question. I mean, rest could mean a whole wide array of
Yeah.
things. Do you mean like they don't do really anything, you just work on flexibility, you don't do any lifting, you don't do any cardio stuff as a rest? I mean, are you talking about active rest? I mean, I guess, what are you talking when you talk about rest?
I think again, some of it's going to be from an age perspective, right? But I mean, because I'm going to take little kids, they're not going to be in the gym 7 days a week, but they're still going to go to the park and play. To your point about climbing trees, right? But I'm thinking about like hardcore workouts in a team situation in the gym. I think of a day of rest of you can still do some gentle balance training. You can still do some flexibility training. I'm looking at, are you getting your muscles sore? And you probably need a day off from that a week minimum. But then I also think about psychological rest and just that burnout. I think to your point, take a vacation or listen to your kids. If, I think sometimes kids do want to be in multiple sports for, we don't know the why, but they don't necessarily understand long term, like, well, okay, I could go and do a family event this weekend, or yeah, we signed up for this and now I have to go to this. So I feel like sometimes listening to that rest of, okay, well, we already had a day off this week, but you don't really want to go and try to tease out what that means. Because I do think you're going to get more out of it in the long run from their physical workouts and their mental perspective if you rest them psychologically within their goals. I don't know if I've answered that
So
question
you mean
well.
like rest away from their sport, or like so are you saying that they can't get in the gym or do lifting and do speed stuff and stuff like that? They need say a week off from all that stuff? Or are you talking about rest just in their particular sport? That's what I guess.
So kind of two things. I'm looking at in a week.
Yeah.
I would suggest that you have kind of a day of rest of hard lifting or hard conditioning. But if that's like, and you give me your info on this, if you're looking at like, some gentle balance and some gentle stretching on that day off, I'm okay with that. When you're looking at kind of rest from your sport, you're getting back into that sports specialization realm where they're really looking at trying to get, if you can, a month off from that sport. Ideally, it's 3 months out of a year. Now, it doesn't often happen, but that doesn't mean you're doing nothing, but maybe you're doing a different sport. So rather than a throwing sport, or an overhead swimming sport, you're doing running, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, rest and recovery can spin off in a ton of different directions. I mean, we'll have some guys that are here working hard 4 or 5 days a week, and for them, a day of yoga, I will consider rest because I know it's a much tamer thing than what they're doing the other days a week. For some kids, I'm like, you know what? Go out this weekend and go for a bike ride with your family. It's active rest. Maybe it's massage. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a massage session for any age athlete. So that version of rest can spin off in a lot of different directions, and it could be different for each individual. And again, now you're going to spin back to the nutrition side of it too, because if they're not eating well or one's eating better than the other, that could determine how much more rest they need than the other two. I know from years past, and you guys probably all know too, you go in for a massage and the therapist right away can tell if you've drank water or not based on how the muscle tissue.
Yes, you can.
So a lot of different things. I don't think you can just say for every hour that someone trains, you're gonna take off this much time because it's too different for everybody.
Yeah.
Any other
I have another
questions?
question too.
Yeah, go.
No,
Actually,
ask
for
us.
the nutrition specialist here. So now, you have a young kid, say they're in their teenage years, and they're in multiple different sports and stuff like that, and they're struggling putting weight on. I know it's multifactorial, but from a nutritional standpoint, do you have suggestions and stuff like that? I mean, it's probably they're not getting enough in their body and they're burning more off, so they're not putting it on, but I'm just curious to know kind of your thoughts on that topic of weight
That
gain.
I would recommend, they are probably burning through. They need to, I always say, pair protein with produce. So pair protein sources with every meal and every snack then to keep it going. Because again, we don't store that. You have to get it lot of times when we think, well, put on weight, and I hear it if someone's sick even, they throw butter in that, and just load up on the junk and the cheeseburgers and stuff. That's not the way to gain the right type of weight. That's going to be that internal fat around your organs, and that's going to lead to long-term problems in the future. So think of the healthy fats, like your nuts and seeds, things like peanut butter or almond butter. Salmon has healthy fats in it, olives, olive oil, avocados, things like that you can pair with every snack as well. So a little bit of that carbohydrate for fiber, protein at every setting, and then healthy fats are very much avoided. I mean, it started in the 80s, and I think we've carried it through. It's got to be low fat, fat-free, and skim, and it should never be that way. Your brain lives on fat. So no wonder that gut health and brain health connection, and then the thriving.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
great question.
Thanks.
Anyone else? All right, well, thank you everybody for attending. We appreciate it, and our panelists will be around, right? If anyone has any questions they want to ask afterwards, for a few minutes at least. So thank you again, I appreciate it. Thank you, and thanks to Synergy for hosting. Thanks everybody.